Welcome, everybody, to Different Thinking for Different Times. And I'm your host, Steve Lentini. And I'm grateful today to have a guest that I find so fascinating, all the different things he's doing and his point of view. It's in alignment with what I talk about, which is expanding our thinking from small-minded acorn brain thinking learned in caveman times to infinite thinking, modeling what we live in, an infinite universe that, we even define it as humans, as a universe, to give a definition. It's beyond comprehension. So with that, I want to welcome my guest. And I'm going to ask you, how do you say your last name, Ali?
Horriyat.
Horriyat, that's what I was going to say. All right, I should have
Easy.
trusted my gut. So welcome, Ali Horriyat, everybody. And I want you first, Ali, to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you came to this, and then we'll go into some of the questions that I have.
Okay. I'll give you the short side of it. I was born in Dubai. Did part of my schooling in Dubai, part in Switzerland. Moved to Canada for university. Did a lot of schooling partly because I enjoyed Toronto as a city. And the reason being, when I grew up in Dubai, it was the 1980s. It wasn't today Dubai, so it's very different. And Toronto was this new world for me, and so I did a lot of schooling because I wanted to stay. And then I started working. I couldn't get a job because I was overqualified. I had 3 master's degrees, 2 undergrads, a postgrad, and so nobody would hire me. And I had a little bit of money. So I started, because I traveled a lot when I was younger with my family, I learned a lot about exchanging currency. Basically, every country you went to, and back then there was no euro. So when you went to Europe, it was, Dutch mark, French francs, British pound, so many different currencies. And so I'd learned about currency a little bit, and I had a little background. And I thought, you know what, I'll just do some trading on my own on Forex and see how that works. One thing led to another. I did well. A whole bunch of my friends said, hey, can we put some money with you so you could, do the same with our money as well? And I said, sure. I did really well then, so well that one day the equivalent of the FCC there basically turned around and said, hey, you can't do this because it's a big amount of money now. It's in the millions and you're not even registered. And I said, register what? Because I had no clue about the legalities of it. And so I got a lawyer. We registered. It became a fund, an actual fund. When it became a fund, a lot of different opportunities opened. Now I could lend the money legally to institutions and homes and mortgages. And so I really grew into that market. And as we grew, more money came in. And then I had my celebrity moment where I had a whole seasonal streak with no missed calls. So every purchase and sale moment that I had actually hit every single time on every trade.
Wow.
And it didn't come as an applause or anything. It came as another security view as what's going on here, what kind of fraud's going on here, because nobody can do that. And then when they realized, no, it was just a lucky streak, that's all it is, they let me go. And so that was the celebrity moment. And from there, I did really, really well. So well that it upset. I started becoming sadder as a person because I'll tell you, the first million is a lot of joy. The first, Porsche is a lot of joy. The first travel with your own money in first class is a lot of joy. But then, just like the concept of diminishing returns in economics, after you give a child their 6th ice cream, they're just going to puke. There's no joy in that 6th one, but the child doesn't know not to eat it anymore. They just eat it and they puke. So because, they have this idea, this delusion that ice cream's good no matter what. And so I was addicted to money, and that was the reality of it. I left. I thought I'd take a break and reconsider what I'm doing. And I was always charitable in a sense, but it was the traditional wealthy people's philanthropic, cool. And it was essentially, going to these galas and giving money away and things like that. And it was mostly a tax write-off. And that was really the most of it. And I'd help friends
Mm-hmm.
here and there. And that was my real charity. My real support was, my circle, my community of people that I would help out financially or even emotionally, or give advice or help or support their kids, which school to go to, being that I was, academic for such a long time. When I
Mm-hmm.
left, I started writing some of the books that I've written. I have 13 books. Some of those were written during that span of the first year or two that I was traveling. And when I say traveling, it was, again, just me going, 5-star resort to another in exotic places of the world, and, writing and thinking I'm going to change the world. That's when I realized, no, I'm addicted to money. And the addiction I'm carrying around with me. It's like being addicted to heroin and just taking it with you on all your travels. Nothing's changing. So I realized I have to give it
Mm-hmm.
away. I have to get rid of it. I have to
Mm-hmm.
detox.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a call
Mm-hmm.
with my team, and I decided to give every penny away. I did that. Even my home, everything was gone, to the point where I actually slept in shelters and train stations for a very short period of time. And it wasn't anything scary for me, because I knew uh, I was eventually going to be okay. It's not like a lot of the people
Mm-hmm.
whom I know are homeless who don't have that to fall back on. So
True.
it wasn't a
True.
matter of me
Mm-hmm.
experiencing homelessness. It's just, for a short period of time, when I say I gave everything away, it was every penny. And
Mm-hmm.
from that experience, I realized the world outside the ivory tower is a lot harder to repair than from that overview that you have, because that overview is so clouded. You're so high up that there's this huge mist of cloud, and you really don't see the problems. You see the problems that may affect you. And so when you want to
Mm-hmm.
fix things, you think of, how do I make this better so that I'm happier or more comfortable, right? And so now I
Mm-hmm.
was I was seeing the world from this new perspective. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when it hit me that it's an easy fix. Actually, it's a very easy fix. We just have to come together. That's all it is. I mean, it's a big thing to come together, but it's an easy thing at the same time, conceptually or theoretically, because um, you know we need money to help the poor, or we need money to help to fix infrastructural issues. Okay, easy. Why can't I get 100 million people to give me $100 each? That's not conceptually difficult, but I mean, it's impossible almost, to realize. And so that's where I kind of got involved in this, and I thought, you know what, the
Even
way to
my
do it,
even my dogs even my
yes,
dogs chimed in with how impossible that
yeah,
is.
they're like, no way, that's like way one too many treats. And so
Right.
I got to the point where I thought, maybe if I built a space where people felt
Mm-hmm.
equally a part of it and equally able to make that change with their support,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's
Mm-hmm.
financial, whether it's being there, whether it's being part of the collective, this collective can grow large enough to make a difference in the world. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. That's where Compassiviste was born. And Compassiviste basically
Mm-hmm.
is a word I put together. It simply means compassionate activist. That's all it means. And compassionate activist
Mm-hmm.
really
It's
means,
pronounced
no,
compassion,
compassiviste. Compassiviste.
compassiviste. I like
Yes.
that. Compassiviste.
And I'll tell you about the E at the end in a second too. So
Okay.
I think everything has to start with compassion, because part of compassion is passion. You need to have some kind of emotion to feel for another person or to feel for yourself. So if you're emotionless
Mm-hmm.
in this world, it means you're purposeless. It means you
Mm-hmm.
bring yourself no value. So the first
Mm-hmm.
thing that we have to get straight is value, passion, compassion. That's the first thing. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is, if we hold value within ourselves and we don't share that value and we don't use that value to make a difference or to make improvement, then this value is really valueless, realistically speaking. So it's kind of like, I have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
$5, I keep it in my pocket. There, a meal costs $1 each. There's 4 people who are starving. If I don't use that $5 to feed them and myself, and they die, that $5 is worthless. There's no value to it. So
Mm-hmm.
action is where the value of compassion comes in. So
Mm-hmm.
activist, the last vist is there. Now you could say the correct spelling would stop at the T. There's no reason for the E. The E is, from Latin base, French, Spanish, other languages, the E is for the femininity. I
Mm-hmm.
believe compassion comes from the feminine side of humanity, from feminine
Mm-hmm.
side of the universe, from the feminine
Mm-hmm.
power of Mother Nature, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
to nurture compassion and to nurture dialogue and to nurture understanding and to cultivate this concept of listening to each other, hearing each other, wanting to find common ground with each other, we have to look at all the challenges that we have with a motherly eye and not with the eye of a soldier. So the art of
Yeah.
war for me doesn't play into this part because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking for a strategy on how to defeat, on how to win, on how to conquer. Machiavelli doesn't play a part here because I'm not looking for overcoming another in an opportunistic manner. What I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
to do is the Jesus way, which is the feminine way, which is basically the motherly way. A mother never looks at, if mothers didn't have that innate love, innate compassion, there would be no living species in the world because as soon as the baby comes out in any mother, any species, even from an egg, it hatches, you eat it. It's the easiest meal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the simplest theory.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest meal. The reason why we grow and you're here at this age and I'm here at this age is because we had a mother who raised us, or a woman, or some kind of feminine power that allowed us to grow, even if we were orphans.
Mm-hmm.
Some people came together, used their femininity to nurture us, and we grew.
Sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
the E at the end, to me, is the most important part of the word. It
Mm-hmm.
allows us to put aside gender, to put aside all of these confusing conversations. And, there are people who believe in two genders, there are people who believe in 750 genders, and there's so much confusion going on there. I think the reason is because we don't understand that we can be all. We are the universe.
Yeah.
There is no, show me God being a woman or being a man. It doesn't exist. So, in a
Yeah.
sense, for procreation, we have this biological space that differentiates us. But in our emotionals, it's not like that. I could hug, a child the same way that a woman can hug a child, with the same emotion, with the same love, with the same, connectivity together.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when
Mm-hmm.
I become the feminine force of myself. That is when my
Mm-hmm.
feminine energy flows, right? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
we need today to really hone in on that feminine power all together and be able to create that. And I love what you said earlier about dialogue because um, our podcast is called Compassiviste Dialogues. And essentially, that's what it is. It's having conversations with people at all levels of life and trying to come to an understanding together, trying to say, okay, if we want to make a difference, should we not first be able to communicate with each other? Should we not be able to spread that love with each other? And if we can, great, we're going to make those differences. And that's the whole
Yeah.
story. And from there, the construction began. And by construction, I mean, I thought, how do I start this? Where do I go with this? And I
Mm-hmm.
thought the arts. And the reason I thought the arts is because every movement, every change, every revolution, every even a lot of the biological evolutions that we relate to, because I find we evolve in two ways, but because we're so scientific, we recognize the tangible evolution. So if we lost an eye because it was purposeless, we say, "Oh, we evolved." That's not there. But when we grow mentally, we don't call it evolution because you can't tangibly catch it, and so we don't
It's true.
recognize it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
our intangible evolution has
Mm-hmm.
shown us that we always start with the arts. And by the arts, I mean by expression. I am unhappy with
Mm-hmm.
my government. I am
Mm-hmm.
unhappy in my marriage, or whatever it may be. And so that's where it starts. And so Compassiviste is an expressionist artistic movement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
how
the, and
we hope
the
to bring people together.
yeah, and then you started the octopus.
Yes. So that's where the
So
octopus came
tell me about
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
So
Sure.
I had all these books. A friend of mine said, I was with a friend of mine. She is a literary I can never say that word. So I'll say wrong, agent, a book agent, basically.
Mhm.
But she
Mhm.
said
Mhm.
she was with me, and she was reading some of the stuff that I'd written, and she's like, "Wow, some of this is really good, Ali." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, "Who's publishing it?" And I said, "Oh, I would never even thought about publishing. I just write for myself. I always write. I write poems. I write music. I write books."
Mhm.
And so she said, "Well, you should really put this together. Where's the rest of it?" And I said, "There is no rest. It's all like a pile of a lot of writing." And she said, "Can I take a look at it?" And I said, "Sure." So she disappeared for about 3 to 4 months, and I thought nothing of it. But then, a few months
Mhm.
later, she's like, "We need to talk." And I said, "What is it?" She's like, "Well, I gave a pile of the stuff to someone. They put a book together from a whole bunch of stuff that related to each other, and then one of the big five is looking to give you a contract, but for a series of the books because of the writing." And I was like, "Wow, okay,
Mhm.
this is good." And let me tell you, it was a horrendous experience because I went there thinking they like what I said, and it was mostly about
Mhm.
our environmental stewardship and how I believe it's a spiritual issue more than anything else. I mean, it's not economics, it's spiritual. I mean, you don't need to overconsume. That whole overconsumption culture is a spiritual issue. It's something that's wrong
Yeah.
here, and here.
Yeah.
It's not something that has to do
Yeah.
with the wallet, because if I don't use
It's
my Visa card today, they're not going to shut it down. I could have it and not use it for 3 years in a row. They're not going to close it. So there's no mandate
yeah.
legally that I have to go and shop. But here,
No.
something's wrong. So,
Well, it's very similar to kicking an empty water bottle down the road, thinking someone else will pick it up. The spiritual aspect of that is, if it reached you, it was meant for you, and to pay attention to one's surroundings, because if each of us do it, it makes a difference. When we
mhm,
can excuse, well, the next guy will do it, or the
right,
cleaners will pick it up.
right,
No, it reached you to test you, perhaps, right? Everyone's got
right.
to prove that idea to themselves. But anyway, yes, continue. I love that
Yeah,
concept.
and
Absolutely.
also it takes away from your pointing fingers too. If you were to pick up the bottle, you wouldn't point your finger at who polluted
Through
and
the
who
bottom,
threw
right?
who threw the bottle, and why is the person who's supposed to clean it not picked it up already? What am I paying my taxes for? All these conversations go in the bin themselves with the bottle because you did it. And that's also one of the
That's
things
true.
one of the things I say about people when they on social media, other places, you see people attacking these corporations like Nestle. Oh, they make too much plastic, they're polluting the world, they're ending our world. Don't buy it. If you don't buy it, if you don't buy the Nestle plastic, Walmart's going to call Nestle and say, "Nestle, please come pick up your plastic bottles because everybody's buying brand ABC's glass bottles
It's
now."
so true. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
Nestle's fault. Nestle is just responding to our demands. That's all it is. So it's our fault.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
publishing house turned around and said, "Well, you need to do a book tour, and we need to print this many books and all that." And I said, "Hold on, hold on. This is about environmentalism and understanding it from a spiritual perspective. How do you want me to jump in a plane and go from Chicago to New York to Miami to other places, and Canada?" Trying to sell a book when I'm telling people to reduce their carbon footprint. And I'm telling people to change their ways. One of the things I really don't want to do with this book is print because I want it to be digital, to tell people, look, we did the same thing with newspapers. I remember when I was young, my dad, other people, they all had newspaper that they would read, and it was this huge document, right? As a child, it was so hard to learn how to flip through a newspaper, like it was always get crumbled. And so it's an art. You feel like you became a man when you actually can flip through that paper, right? In my days. And so you're an adult now, Ali, right? And now I look around and I'm like, I can't for the life of me spot one person reading the paper in that way anymore, with the espresso there and a cigarette. And that was the culture. And now it doesn't exist. And we transition so easily. Everybody reads the news on their phones today. And, it transitions so easily. Why can't
Yeah.
we
Hmm.
transition with other things that are, you know, detrimentally disastrous to our lives? And books was one of it. And so I explained this to them. They're like, "Yeah, you're right, but this is where the profit is." And I said, "Well, then why do you like my book? What is the interest? What appeal is there to my book when you tell me we want to pollute, and my book is saying do not pollute. You should want to kill me, not promote me. And so we had an argument. I said no. I walked away. When I walked away, I said, okay, I walked away because I'm crazy. But there's a lot of sane people with families that they have to feed who are going to say, I need this job. I need this book published because our mortgage depends on this book. They are not in a position to fight the big five. They're not in a position to fight that $50, $100,000 million contract. So
True.
they have to take it. I thought, this is the place. This is what the universe is showing me. Start the publishing house. That's what I did. I started a publishing house. And so the first arm of the octopus was start the publishing house, get everybody who has the same kind of thought process to come here and leave them their rights. Because one of the things I found out, because I was never in the publishing world, I found out they take your book, they own it. You don't even own your book anymore. It's my writing.
Yeah.
I don't own it. I have no rights to it. They can do whatever they want to it. And I said, but it's mine. Yeah. And they don't understand the concept of it's mine. And so I said, you know what, in this publishing house, you as the author, this is your work. You hold on to it. We're just facilitating the spread of the beautiful work of art so that your mind can be spread around the world through this concept, through this file, through this PDF. I can put your mind in every living room in the world that wants your mind in there. And that's the goal. That's what it should be. And so I started that. And then I thought, okay, to help the world, we need to have a foundation of some sort where we can tie the sales of this publishing house to the foundation to make the changes that we want to make in our collective when the collective grows. And so we registered a charity. And now the charity has 5 locations globally, US, UK, Brazil, other places. And what we did after that is I thought, okay, I do music. And, I love film, and there's many different avenues and mediums of art to express. I should expand into those. So we have, love, which is LOVE. It stands for language of emotion, but of is written as OV instead of OF. And the idea of language of emotion is, I'm sure many people who are 20, 30 years old who are listening or watching won't remember this, but a lot of the older people will remember Live 8 in 1985 with Queen and all the other bands. That concert was free. If you watch the Queen documentary, actually, that was recent, a couple of years ago, I think it was, they make a point of inserting the part where Freddie Mercury has to fight to get stage time in that concert because they were late to the game. And so imagine the passion of an artist who's like, this is free. I'm taking my own flight there. I'm bringing my own band there. I'm bringing everything there. But I want to be a part of a movement. I want to be a part of change. My music is for change. So they show up and they have one of the best sets they've ever had in the history of Queen. And so many of the other ones too. And then what happens from that music, from that concert? Who gets involved? Princess Diana. Because it was for AIDS, right? And Princess Diana's like, wow, this was really moving. This was touching. Okay, I want to get involved. What does she do? Later on, we find out, she's at a hospital. She shakes hands with an AIDS victim. And basically, the stigma breaks. People are like, oh, you don't get AIDS like that? Oh, because I remember I was a child and my mom, when we went to Europe and the AIDS thing broke out in the early 80s, said, don't sit there. Don't touch this. Don't move it. Everybody was like that, right? Because we didn't know how it came. So music changed the world. It wasn't politics. It wasn't economics. It was not medicine even, because medicine was doing its work, but it still could not reach the people. It was music that reached the people. And so I said, you know what? I want to revive that, because when I see huge artists today who really are like, the whole music industry of the 1980s can be placed into possibly one artist's reach today. Someone like Taylor Swift, someone like Beyonce. When you have people with that capacity and that reach, I want to build a space where people can come together and, again, use music to make a difference. I remember I was in Toronto. I was living there when the SARS pandemic hit. And the Rolling Stones came there and they had a SARS concert for us. And, everybody loved it. It was beautiful. It was nice of them. People don't do that anymore, like when Louisiana flooded, 2 decades ago or something, 3 decades ago, nobody showed up. I mean, there was nothing, so many tragedies happen, so many problems, so much poverty, so many wars happen. We're really not there anymore. Like the Bonos and those kind of people are not there anymore. We've become utterly
Yeah.
capitalistic. And even through the agencies, maybe sometimes the artists want to help and the agent's like, no, the contract says I get 15%. So either you're paying me, somebody's paying me, or you're not going. And so the artists
Right.
handcuffed, they can't go. So language of emotion is designed for that, to bring amateur, A-list, whatever type of artists together to create these spaces where we can
Mm-hmm.
celebrate through music and really make a difference in the world. The art
Mm-hmm.
program and the kitchen program is very similar. It's a free kitchen with an experience center where we essentially show people how to eat locally and without animal cruelty. And so what we do
Mm-hmm.
here is we get local farmers to sponsor the project in the regions that we place the kitchen. And so because they're giving us the
Mm-hmm.
fruit and the food, we get local chefs to make the menu with what's available in the region. And this
Mm-hmm.
reduces our misunderstanding of our foods because a lot of people have watermelon 12 months out of the year. And I explain to people, watermelon is not a winter fruit. And the reason you have watermelon in New York and Whole Foods in December is only because of capitalism. It's not because it is healthy for you. The world created every food for us that we need for our bodies to be healthy. I'm not a doctor,
Sure.
I'm not a nutritionist, but I know enough that if I look at, all the foods that come out of the earth, it's sufficient for me to be healthy. I don't need to take 20 extra pills to make that happen. And so we need to learn that. So we teach that while bringing in the issue of homelessness and animal shelters and animal problems in cities, in urban areas, in the developed world, mostly Europe and North America. And we try to make people
Mm-hmm.
live through this experience of understanding what that could be like and to bond people together. And so
Mm-hmm.
homeless people are welcome, the wealthiest people are welcome, everybody can come, everybody can join. We'll have a whole event every day, and this way people can get that experience and to bond and to make a difference, so that the next time you walk past somebody who is sitting on the side of the road, you don't just think automatically that that's a bum. That
Sure.
person is a life. That person has a story. You have no clue if you would have even survived what they survived, that they're still alive and sitting there and hopeful to some extent to something, for something, or attached to something, that they're alive. You may have
Yeah.
had a heart attack and died going through the traumas that some of these people have. So we need to kind of
Yeah.
relate to that and bring compassion. And so the other program is the film program, and with that, right now there is no that we have all these film fests and all these awards, and from
Mm-hmm.
the Oscars to others. In the Oscars we don't have a social impact compassion award for the movie with that really moved people, changed people, a documentary that made people get up and make a difference in their lives, because it doesn't matter. Comedy matters, action matters, wardrobe matters. Those are the
Sure.
things. That sound matters,
Sure.
engineering matters, the music matters. Not that they don't, they do. And I love that artists are pushing every envelope, because look at the films we make today versus the 1920s. It's all technology and pushing and innovation. I love that. I love it. But what happened to your heart along the way? Did you leave it back home? I mean, did we leave it 100 years back? Because where are those? Where's the championing of these kinds of movies? So
Yeah.
Compassiviste film is about rewarding these type of films, for people to come and say, I have a script, I'm a director, I have an idea. I have a friend of
Mm-hmm.
mine, Oliver Munoz. I have another friend of mine, Sonia Rockwell. Both of them made autism movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Self-funded, in the sense that they had to go out and scrap and raise funds and make the films, the documentaries and the feature film. And you know you can't get those at MGM or Universal.
No, and I in the '60s, I was born in '52, so in the '60s I grew up, and I wanted later on. It was in the '90s, late '90s. I wanted to make a documentary called "A Walk Through the '60s," and I
Hmm.
got some sample footage because there was so much activism, and that's the point I wanted to make, to encourage people that as you look back now, can you see all this activism finally did make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King, the
Yes.
Kent State demonstrations against the Vietnam War,
Mm-hmm.
the Burn the Bra, which was about women's freedom and
Mm-hmm.
women's voice. And there were so many different protests
Muhammad
that took
Ali.
a while. Muhammad Ali, I had Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali in there. In the demo footage, and no one was interested, right? It wasn't of interest. And so, because that, though, looking back, people could see it took a while. It would give people patience
Yes.
and
Yes.
strength and resilience and courage to stand their ground and continue to make the point, albeit, hopefully peacefully. That would, like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi. I mean,
Yes.
there was footage in there, wasn't from the 60s, but to make the point that Gandhi changed India without one single shot fired. So
I know.
that's a beautiful, I love that mission.
That's the idea, and I keep saying that. I say, Moses. I mean, Noah. These are, whether you're religious or not, whether you believe or not, whether you think those are fables, it doesn't matter. The point is, Noah stood there and built this ark, metaphorically, even. Let's just say that, okay, to get everybody
Sure.
interested.
Right.
Metaphorically, Noah built this ark, and he brought all the animals and the people that he could and whatever, and saved them. Okay.
Right.
That was some form of activism, because the whole community was like, "You're psycho," and he's like, "No, it's coming," and that happened.
Yeah.
Moses,
Yeah.
If God came to me right now and is like, taps me on my shoulder, says, "Ali," I say, "Yes." "Oh God, okay, hi," and he says, "Here's a staff, go to Israel right now, and tell Hamas and Netanyahu, no more. I'm gonna hit both of you with some disaster if you don't listen to me," right? I would probably tell God, "No, go find some other, like, what are you talking about, this staff," right? Moses believed. He went and he walked all the way to Pharaoh, which was much more, at that moment, it was much more frightening than going to Netanyahu today. I would assume if I had to appear in front of Netanyahu today, it would be a more civil exchange because of the laws and the cameras and everything else. Back then, it's like, chop his head, and that was it. And so he did that. He went there and he stood his ground. And now, whatever the magic and everything else, whether you call it God or magic or however the story goes, he saved some people. These people, were able to move. Jesus, Gandhi, Ali, Martin Luther King, people dared. They dared, and there was no capitalism involved. And I always mention Martin Luther King with BLM, right, side by side. And I mentioned them because Martin Luther King did not have the budget BLM had. Okay. But there was legislative changes. The laws changed because of Martin Luther King. Since George Floyd's death, show me one state with one law that has changed.
I don't know. You're right.
Nobody knows. You know why? Because the money was not purposed to the activism, because the activism was part capitalistic, because the activism was about, let me sell T-shirts, let me move to Malibu. And that's what happened, right? So they're not Martin Luther Kings. Yes, these are not Martin Luther Kings. So when you say activate and become activists, we need to say it in the capacity of a mission with leadership and a goal. Today, we don't have leaders because the leaders get bought quickly, whether they're trade unions or whoever they may be. As soon as they become CEO, even in sports, you go into the NBA, the NHL, any of the sports, and as soon as the union people come to the top, somehow they're in bed with the owners of the team. Somehow they're in bed, like they're not representing the players anymore. And then the players have to go create their own association behind the association that's built for them originally, which doesn't make sense, right? The reason is everybody's bought easy. And so today what we need is strict goals. We need to say, okay, you know what? The George Floyd thing happened. You could say it was one cop. It was a bad cop, and it happens. We're almost 400 million people in the US. One guy this happened to, we need to let it go. Fine, I'll give you that. I'll even give you that. But show me what you're doing that will at least prevent this from happening again. God forbid it happens again. Just like the bridge that fell. Show me what you're doing that it happened once. Once in the history of America, it happened that a ship hit a bridge and it fell. We shouldn't
Yeah.
panic about it. Okay, fine, we won't panic about it, but show me how you're learning from it. If you can't show me that, I'm going to panic. I'm going to start panicking because I'm knowing now that my government is not representing my best interests. And
Sure.
that's what's happening in the world. So, the music, the arts, the food, the dialogues, the podcast, the books, the charity, and the society that the conglomerate, basically all the people who join. Once this comes out, in a sense that people start realizing what we're trying to do and what the goal of this and what the mission of this is, it's essentially, hey, through these 8 different arms and gaming, of course. We have
Mhm.
different aspects of gaming. Um, all of these
Mhm.
8 different aspects, people can come in from any expressive space that they want. Once they get into
Wait.
Compassiviste,
Wait, Ali, when you
yeah.
say gaming, you mean games that aren't killing people, video games that aren't killing people? You mean games that
So no,
have a good
okay. I'll give you a quick breakdown of the games. We have 2 kinds of games. One
Sure.
is essentially,
Yeah.
both are environmentally structured. One is, imagine you go and stand into a virtual reality cube, okay, with 19 other people,
Mhm.
20 of you. Each of you has a smartphone. You
Mhm.
get the app connected, and basically, when you enter, the whole screen will show you 1500s in your city. So wherever you are, whether you're in Chicago,
Mhm.
London, you know, uh, wherever, Nairobi,
Mhm.
you pick. You're in the city. It will reposition you in 1500s of your city. It will ask you a series of
Mhm.
questions. So basically, right now, in the innovative times that you're in, you could go this way or that way. You could choose this or you could choose that. What would you choose? And you make those choices. Then the 1600s, then the 1700s. Each one is about 30 seconds of questions. Then you get to the 1800s. Then you get into the industrial revolution, and before that, feudalism and,
Mhm.
and the slavery and all of those things. Would you choose to have slavery? I mean, as an African in Africa, would you choose to sell your own people for money at that point, with what you know
True.
now? Because that's part of it too. I mean, you can't
Right.
just blame the empire, because somebody had to sell them to the
No.
empire. We need to talk about
Right.
that
If
too.
you could
So,
meet your grandfather in
right.
America and you learned he had bought slaves, what would you tell him now?
Yes. And so,
Right.
it's
I
this.
love that idea.
Yeah, it grows until today. And then basically it asks you questions based on your answers. So when you said, yeah, I want slavery, then you have racism issues in the future that it will start asking you about. But when you say, no, I
Yeah.
will absolutely not, interfere or be a part of that and whatever, then the future starts to change. And you see the world that you're not
Mhm.
in anymore, because that wasn't the choice we made. And you see that, maybe world wars didn't happen and stuff. And so eventually
Mhm.
it gets to
Mhm.
the point where it goes from 2020 all the way to 2100, and it stops at 2100.
Mhm.
By 2100,
Mhm.
based on your choices, it's a realistic scientific measure of what the world in 2100 would look like. And some of it
Mhm.
is scary. But when you see that and you think to yourself, I have a child who's 7 years old who will probably have a child who's 7 years old by then, that is an issue. That is an issue. I
It's
don't want to be
true.
a part of that. So that's one
It's
game.
true.
And then the results of all these games from different cities get compiled, and then we show the world which cities are at the forefront of making the better choices, which cities are really in
I
tune
love
with themselves, right? And we showcase that. So
So
that's one part of it.
so how do we best support you? What is it that we can do as a community to support you?
As a community, this is what we're doing. We are going to ask people to be involved in our projects and be involved in them, not just financially, because there are people who can afford to give $100. There are people who can afford to give literally $1 million. And there are people who can't afford to give $1. Just
Sure.
because you can't afford to give, and we've re-scripted philanthropy
Mm.
or charity to only money, it doesn't mean you have no value. When you
Mhm.
cannot give $1, you can participate, you can share the ideas, you can talk about it, you can change yourself through this ideology. Compassivist is all about, like you said, the nonviolent, compassionate activism. So the next
Yeah.
time you're in a position to stand your ground, do so, be a compassiviste, but don't be violent. But defend yourself and defend what you stand for, because that's how
Yeah.
change happens. Change does not happen when, you believe in something and you're trying to make a difference towards it and you educated yourself about it and you're making a stand like Rosa Parks did, and then the police show up and you say, okay, fine, I'll move from my seat. No, you stand your ground. That's
Mm-hmm.
nonviolent change, and that's how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
we're not really doing that today, because we have no purpose. We just go out for the flow of the stuff that happens. When people went
Yeah.
out for the Black Lives Matters marches, I asked a lot of people, what is it that you're getting done here today in this protest? I mean, what law are you going again after? What are you asking for? You're here in front of
Mm-hmm.
your parliament. What is it? If a member of parliament came out right now to the fence and said, hey guys, what are you doing here? What are you guys going to say? Who's your spokesperson?
Mm-hmm.
No organization. That was not Martin Luther King. And
Yeah.
back then, they didn't even have the tools to be as organized as we were, and they were. And they were, right?
They
So
were.
shame on us, shame on us. But be involved, make that change, be a compassivist. That's the first level. The second
Mm-hmm.
level is support financially, because the
Mm-hmm.
truth is, for us to be able to make the changes that we want to make, we need the funding that we want to. But I don't
Yeah.
want, and I've said this many times, I want smart money, not rich people money. And what I mean by that is,
Mm-hmm.
a billionaire may come and say, oh, I love what you're doing. I love this. I love the logo. It's amazing. Um, I'll sponsor this. I'll give you $200 million and, put my banner right there with you. And I say,
Yeah.
but no, but you're half your money's in BlackRock. Like, how do you want me to work with you? Like, your money is sitting in HSBC. You have stocks in Aramco. Like, what do you want me to do with you, right? If you want to be a compassivist, don't give me the 200 million. Just move from those places and I'll be much more grateful to your services. So
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of money. I want the money of the people who are making the difference, but who need
Yeah.
to expand that. So the people who are
Yeah.
saying, I'm going to read that digital book because I don't want to be part of the child slave labor of print books.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of this movement because I don't want to be a part of that anymore, and I want to make that difference. Those kind of people, you're not going to make a change alone. You're doing the right thing, but you're not going to make that change alone, because one less book out of Amazon is not going to make a difference. But
No.
you and I and Steve and 20 million other Allies and Steves and Sarahs, those are the powers that are going to come together, and Amazon's going to be like, oops, we're short
Yeah.
an insane amount. Our market share, our problems, you hit them where it hurts. And then,
Right.
and it's not that they're evil, they're just supporting what we want. So make
Well, they
that change.
might change as a
They will.
result.
No, it's not
Right.
even they might. They have to,
They
because
they have
because
to.
they have to because they
True.
have to sell. Well, because I'll
Right.
tell you something. Capitalists have no agenda other than profit.
Right.
Okay, people
Right.
have this delusional idea that a capitalist has an ideology. A capitalist has no backbone. A capitalist says, I want the maximum amount of money, and that's all it is. That's what it comes down to, at
Yeah.
any expense, which
Yeah.
is why slavery happened. I mean, slavery
Right.
does emotionally, slavery can't happen. From a humanitarian perspective, slavery can't
True.
happen. How do you do that to someone? It's impossible. But when you think
Right.
about it, this is the cheapest way for labor, and I'm going to make the most profit. It makes absolute sense, and you do
Yeah.
it. Eugenics, all these, even sciences came up with ideas that were capitalistic in nature, which is why they worked. They made sense because we value the dollar like God. So
Yeah.
at this point, I tell people, don't worry about Amazon, because when nobody's buying print books from Amazon, Amazon's going to have the most innovative, perfect technology for digital. They're going to have the
True.
best readers. They're going to have the best color distributions. They're going to have a
True.
pop-up stuff on digital, because you know
True.
why? Because they have $5 billion to invest overnight to have the best book reader out. And because that
True.
sells for them. Apple will do it. Everybody will do it. But so long as we're sitting there and piling on the books, it's not their fault. We're asking them. So that's the second stage. Be a part of what we're doing. So when Steve gives money, Ali gives money, Sarah gives money, then all of a sudden we have $30 instead of $10 each. $30
Mm-hmm.
together has more power than $10 each.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to raise that to an insane number. So, I'm not looking at 1 million followers or being an influencer, none of that. I'm looking for raising 100 million people who say, okay, let's give this a shot. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't. What's the worst that can happen? Let's give it a shot. I'll throw my $10 in here, just like a lottery ticket. Do you know how many people buy a lottery ticket for you guys to have a $1 billion Powerball? A lot of people are going against 7 million odds. I'm telling you, it's a 50-50 here. I either do it or I don't. I either buy a house in Malibu or I make the change. It's a 50% chance of either way, right? Because there's
Right.
only two things I can do. You're at 50% odds. Throw me the money. Let me make difference. Let me make change. Let me make the programs and the plans, because we have an app that describes all the plans and programs that we're doing. Let me show you there what we can do with the money that we have. Once
Yeah.
this flows and the wheel turns and you see the wheel going in the direction that you want, jump on the wagon. Then I want you to don't take the risk up front. So don't go, picking your positions and risking yourself and your job, because these days, even in the freest countries, if you have an opinion, you lose your job. I don't want you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to support Compassiviste vocally. Just give me that
Mm-hmm.
$10. Let me do the work. Let me be the Jesus. Let me get crucified. I'll do that. Let me be the Martin Luther King. I'll do that. I don't want you to get hurt. But if I succeed like Gandhi and I did not become crucified, then at
Mm-hmm.
that point you can stand behind me like the farmers did.
Mm-hmm.
That is all I'm asking people.
And then are there ways that we can support the books? You said you mentioned the digital
Yes.
publishing. Do you
Yes.
have authors?
So yes, we
How do
do.
we reach some of those
So we
books?
have a few authors right now, and we have more in the pipeline, and we have book series coming out, and we have my books as well. Those are so what we did is we decided not to sell them through our own publishing. We decided to
Mm-hmm.
sell them through Amazon, only as
Mm-hmm.
digital. And the reason is we wanted to show people that you could use the same platforms. You don't need to boycott. You don't need to
I like
fight.
the
You don't
idea.
need to, go and say, oh, these are the bad people. These are the devils. Amazon's. No, Amazon's offering a service. It's up to us to choose what service we want. I want to go on Amazon. It's my right to put my book on Amazon and to say, I only want it digitally. If every
Mm-hmm.
author chose that right, what would happen to the print books in Amazon? They would cease to exist. That is the goal
Sure.
that I'm trying to show, not to fight
Well, I'm
Amazon.
glad you made me aware of that, because I think I have 9 or 10 books on Amazon now, but I have a couple in the works that I will do just digitally. And I have an
If
Acorn and Oak children's book called A Tale of Potential, where we take the small-minded thinking,
right.
a child thinking, fear-based, and then develop into, the standing next to the acorn is the oak, right? What's possible? What's the potential?
And if you
And
want,
so anyway, yeah.
and for publishing too, you have your books.
I would do
If you
just the
want,
digital.
yeah, we can
Mhm.
we can publish it for you too. We're a traditional publishing house. We're not a vanity pub. We don't ask our authors for anything. We
No,
actually
I would
spend
support your
money.
mission.
You
I
know,
like the idea of
yeah,
just the digital, and
yeah.
the universe has a way of reaching the people that you're meant to reach,
Yes,
right?
always, always. I believe that very strongly. And I've seen that happen in my life. From the moment that I've started Compassiviste, I've fallen on people who I've met in the most impossible of ways. And you would think that there are people on the team, literally, in a little town in Brazil, in Melbourne, Australia, in Montreal, Canada, in London, England, like scattered all over in Argentina, scattered all over the world. And you would be shocked at how, the universe just planted them in front of me and said,
Yeah.
this is the person for this. You were looking for, I heard you were looking for a lawyer. Here, that's the lawyer.
So
Simple as
how do
that.
we find you? What's the website? Give
Okay.
us some way to
So,
find you.
compassiviste.com is the website. So,
So
Compassiviste.com. That's the website. Easy.
Compassioniste, yeah.
And so what we have is we have tabs for every different department. So the Compassiviste Publishing has its own tab, Compassiviste Planet, Compassiviste Foundation, and the different
Mhm.
causes we support and all of that. We have those, and it's all there. And then we have social media. I personally am not a big fan of social media, but I respect social media in the sense of the good that it can do. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, there's so much going on there in the competition to be able to be seen and to be able to say, hey, look, I'm doing something good here. I'd like people to join it. and there's so
Hmm.
much like things going on there that are dark in a sense that I don't really enjoy. So we do have at Compassiviste all across everywhere,
Hmm.
that you can see what we're doing. We post our stuff there as well. But really,
Hmm.
the best way to support is to get in touch as well. I like people to get in touch because when you donate money, it's also a kind of a distant relationship where you donate
Sure.
money, I send you an email, I say thank you very much, with a couple of flowers
Sure.
or something, and that's it. But when you
Right.
say something, when you email us, when you talk to us, when you say something on our Instagram or somewhere, you're communicating, and we communicate back, and it builds something. You may have something that we can work with. You may have a cause that would really, really fit what we're trying to do, and we're like, we'd love to take that on, right? We'd love to work
Hmm.
with you there. So I
Hmm.
think that lost art of communication and reaching out to each other should be
Sure.
found, especially in this time when it's like that. One email, press send, done. One reply on Instagram or LinkedIn or something, done. Hey Ali,
Yeah.
I like what you're doing. This is what I'm doing. It's kind of similar. Let's collaborate. Lovely. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I think that when you think about the mission, remembering how long it took for so many others to make a difference, and know with faith that this is going to make a difference,
Mhm.
Ellie. This is going to make a difference.
And
There's
I
no doubt
say,
about it.
but I say it took no time at all. It took a day. You know why? Because when we look back at Martin Luther King, we cannot understand, or when we look back to South Africa, we cannot understand what it's like to sit in jail for 27 years until we can
Yeah.
get up and start what we started 27 years ago over again. So
Yeah.
we don't know
Yeah.
how that feels. We don't know how long that takes because we're not living in that moment. we didn't
No.
we didn't go through the 27 years of waiting and saying, okay, when is this going to end? When can we all be equal? We didn't do that. We're sitting here in the future looking at history, and it's a moment because it's
Yeah.
it's the paragraph that you read. That's all it
Back
is.
at some moment. I
Exactly.
agree.
And so when I'm
Yeah.
living in it, I keep telling myself it doesn't matter how much effort you have to put into it, Ali, because looking back, there will be a generation who will say, this took a moment, but look at what
Yeah.
it's doing today. Jesus was
Yeah.
a moment. Getting nailed on the cross was probably, the whole thing was probably 15 minutes, if that. But
Yeah.
look at the
Mm-hmm.
impact. I'm not talking about the
Mm-hmm.
business in the Catholic Church, but I'm talking about the golden rule, the impact,
True.
the
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
Jesus blessed the world with was
Yeah.
was done that way. And so,
Yeah. The
that 15
message. Yeah.
minutes, yeah, the message in 15 minutes essentially is something that will never be forgotten for as long as there
Oh,
is some force of communication in the world. And so,
thousands of years it's
yes,
lasted.
yeah, over
And to
2,000
your
years, and we
point,
remember it.
I never thought about it like that, but it was probably 15 minutes and it's lasted thousands of years.
Right. And there are people who have committed their entire lives to destruction and disaster that we don't remember anymore. We remember Saddam Hussein today, we remember certain names because they were just recent history. But tell me the
Right.
1970s or 1980s, how many people, you can stop in the middle of the street, tell me who was the worst person in the 80s? They'll be like, the 80s, I don't know. Let me think about it. You see what I mean? But when you say who
True.
was the worst person
Different.
today, yeah, and the only name they'll remember is Hitler because, it was huge, but that's
Right.
it. But
Right.
but there were so many
Right.
bad people along the same time as Hitler, supporting,
It's
helping,
true.
being a part of it. Other countries that defended him and supported him. It wasn't just
True.
Germany. Nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers Mussolini that much. So
Right.
you see what I mean?
It's
Like
true.
we forget quick. But to see the
Right.
impact of the names that pop up right away, Mother Teresa, recent, Jesus, old, but they pop up right away. That's the impact
True.
of the work,
True.
of good work.
True.
That's compassion.
Right. So leave us with, as we get ready to close here, leave us with a thought and then remind everybody again how they can get in touch with you and support your work, etc.
Okay. I'll say how they can reach me first because I want people to remember the thought. That's more important
Go
than how
ahead.
to reach me. You
Go
can
ahead.
reach me on compassiviste.com, on our social media handles, which are all across the board at Compassiviste.
And we
Those
will
are
put that in the notes, by the way, too. We'll put that in the show notes.
perfect.
So,
So
yeah.
that's that. And
Hmm.
other than that, to leave people with a thought, I'll leave you with two thoughts. There is a thought that
Sure.
is wrongly ascribed to Socrates, the philosopher. It was in Dan Millman quote of the character Socrates. In Dan Millman's book, and basically the thought is, don't spend your energy fighting the old, but work on the new, because it's the new that will develop and make the difference. So, to all the
Hmm.
people who are sitting there and trying to fight the forces that they think they have to fight now, don't think of that. If you're an environmentalist, for example, or an animal rights activist, or all those things, don't try to fight the person who is skinning the animals for their fur. Actually, start changing people's mindsets to not want to buy the fur, which in turn will stop the trade. Because if you fight them, it's just going to get more gruesome, because they're going to find it more difficult to, skin the animal. So it's going to become more brutal. That's all you're doing, because the trade will last. We've had all this
Sure.
activism and it hasn't stopped the fur trade.
No.
But the way we're reducing it is actually people are not doing it anymore. When a lot of people learn how it's gotten, and a lot of people learn the massacre of this trade, they started saying, I'm not buying fur anymore, whether they're the designer who's making it, whether they're the consumer. And so it changed. It's never
Yeah.
attacking the person involved in it. So don't attack Nestle. Don't do these things. Find the ways that we can make the change to get this, there. And the second
Yeah.
thought is, we need to make compassion our first mental module, which means this comes from Buddhism. And essentially, Buddha thought, the mind works in modules. And I say it this way so it's easy to understand. If a lion shows up in front of me, and I'm bargaining with a shopkeeper to buy a pair of shoes in a discount, my mental module that's on then is my, calculator, my economics module that's bargaining. I see the lion, that module is going to exit, and the fear module is going to go in to say, how are you going to get out of this and stay alive? Because there's no economics with the lion. So the modules change, and the favored module always takes over for every situation. In
Hmm.
our world today, we have become so capitalistic that this constant capitalist module, this economic module of capitalism, has taken over most of our decision makings, whether it's
Hmm.
purchasing something, whether it's investing somewhere, whether it's even having relationships with people. They've become opportunistic in nature. And so I
Hmm.
say to myself, how is it that if I'm attracted to somebody and I want to date them, for example, how is it that the money aspect comes into play? Well, there has to be a materialistic module involved, because love is taken kind of like a second place there. We need to
Hmm.
stop ourselves from doing that. Every time we want to take an action, if we put in our compassion, we say, okay, before I order that, for example, coffee, let me put my compassion hat on. Let me think, where's the coffee coming from? How is this coffee made? What is this coffee really costing? What are my alternatives? Let me just purely think compassionately. Then make that action that you intend to make. You will make such a huge difference in your own life, and it will
Yeah.
ripple communally into everybody's lives. So
Yeah.
the thing I want to leave people with, which is really Compassiviste's motto, love always, always love, is to always be in that module of love, which is the Jesus way. Whether you're religious or not, doesn't matter, you're Christian, Muslim, whatever you may be. He was a human being, and he told people to love each other. That's all it is. That's all you need to know about Jesus. And for
Yeah.
that, if you can be that way, there'll be no problems in the world.
Yeah. Well, and I want to leave people with this thought that if you're listening this, remember something Muhammad said too, which was, what reaches you was never meant to miss you, and what misses you was never meant to reach you. And so if this reached you, there's a reason for this, and give it some thought. Even if it's not buying the Nestle water bottle instead of fighting Nestle, because Eckhart Tolle says when you fight life, life fights you. And to Ali's point, don't buy it in a glass bottle, or don't buy it at all. Go home, wait and go home and get a drink of water from your tap. But that's the activism that makes a difference, and that's been proven. That's
Mhm.
been proven. And I just love your message, and I'm going to do everything I can to support you on my social media. And I'm sure we'll have a conversation later about some other things because I'd love to find a way. I'm in New York City. I'm in Staten Island, New York. It's kind of, some people say it's not a borough of the city. It is a borough of the city. It doesn't look like New York City.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that there's a way to make a difference around here. And I'm glad to do whatever I can to help. And that's part of my message. You've been listening to Different Thinking for Different Times. And what we talk about is stretching that small-minded thinking, like Ali's doing every day in his work, into limitless thinking, changing people's minds and then behaviors, changing their hearts and then behaviors. It'll make a difference. I'm grateful, Ali. Thank you for your message. And I'm grateful to everyone who's listened and will listen to this message. Take it to heart. Love the moment. Find a way to make a difference by loving those around you and changing what you're doing from small-minded to limitless. Ali, thank you.
Thank you. You said it best.
I'm grateful.